What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Hey, everybody. This is John Corcoran with Dr. Jeremy Weisz, and this episode is a little bit different. This is a live interview that we recorded at the Global Leadership Conference from Entrepreneurs Organization, where some of the best entrepreneurs from around the globe gathered in Washington, D.C. to share ideas and to learn about entrepreneurship. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to give to and to connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships, helping you to run a podcast so that it generates a referral pipeline and ROI.
Yeah, I mean, John, after both of us have been podcasting for over a decade, the number one thing in our life is relationships. And we're always looking at ways to give to our best relationships. And we found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies we admire and shout from the rooftops what they're working on. And this interview is no different. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should go to rise25.com to learn more, or email us at support@rise25.com.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the interview.
Enjoy. Jeremy Weisz here. We're live from EOGLC, brought to you by Rise 25. I'm here with Lisa. And Lisa, tell people your company and what you do.
My name is Lisa Riley, and I own franchises in Tulsa, Oklahoma called PinotsPalette. They are painting studio wine bars where we walk people step by step through a full canvas painting in 2 hours while we listen to rock music and we drink libations.
So how did you get into this?
Funny enough, I started out as a customer in Houston, and I went with my team from ConocoPhillips to do a team building, and I was like, man, this is a really cool concept. And I'm not an artist. I have never painted before except in like art class in high school, but I loved it and didn't think much of it. And then wanted to move home back to Oklahoma. And one of my girlfriends one night, we were at Pino's, a bunch of us moms, and she said, you know, why don't you just buy a Pino's? They started franchising, and that way you have a job back home. And I was like, had just enough wine. I was like, it's a great idea.
Just enough wine will do anything.
Right. So I applied for a franchise, and they called me a couple weeks later and said, hey, we'd love to speak with you. And, 11 months later, I opened my first store in Tulsa. 12 months later, I opened a second store. And 9 months later, I opened a third store. And then I have a fourth franchise, which is a mobile, where we'll go and do like massive events. We don't do home stuff or any like private party like things. We do big, massive things like for corporations who have like 400 employees, or we paint at the Tulsa Zoo with like 200 or 300 people, or the aquarium, and like big locations like that.
How do you decide to open a new location? At what point?
Well, funny enough, I actually didn't. I'm a brand new entrepreneur. I'd always worked in corporate America for billion-dollar corporations, and I was not prepared. I used my savings to open my first store, and I was maxed out with loans and my savings, and my CEO called me and said, we have so many people applying for the second location in Tulsa because whatever you're doing is working, and we want to give you the first opportunity to buy that second franchise because I didn't buy an area agreement, couldn't afford it. And then I met somebody who told me he was going to open up the second one, and he was a jerk, and I thought, oh my gosh, if he is going to be technically a business partner of owning a second location just 12 minutes from me, and if he runs his in the ground, he's going to give me a bad reputation. And I went home that night and I said to my husband, I have to open the second one. I know we're not ready. We have no money to do it, but I got to figure out a way to do it because they're going to hurt my life savings and I can't have that happen. So in 24 hours, I called banks, got the money, bought the franchise, opened the second one. And then a year later or 6 months later, the CEO called me and said, where in the world is Broken Arrow, Oklahoma? And I said, this time I have the money. I'll send you the check tomorrow. And so I opened the third location, and honestly, I wasn't ready to open a multiple location. I thought I'd do it in like 5 years. And, God had other plans. And man, I just was like, had my head down in March. Now I look back on it and I'm like, how did I even do that? But I'm a mom. I'm a multitasker. It's like, I got to get things done,
How many kids do you have? What have you learned from parenting that you take into the business?
Oh God, that's a loaded question. So I only have one child. When I opened my third store in 3 years, I got diagnosed with cancer, and that was very unexpected. I had a 4-year-old, 3 new businesses, and I had cancer, which I don't recommend to anybody. And but we just celebrated our 10th anniversary of being in business, and that's a big, only 4% of businesses make it to their 10-year mark. So I celebrate that, but I learned a lot from having cancer, and I learned a lot about being a mom and taking a step back. I'm so driven, and it made me stop and realize I need to be driven at home as well, as much as in business. And that was a good barometer for me to stop and smell the roses and to be more present with my kiddo, because I'm an entrepreneur now. Like, I go 100 miles an hour to that wall, and it made me kind of go, let's go 75, and then let's slow it down a little bit, and let's make some of these life lessons that you learn from your 4-year-old, or that you learn and you can instill in your 4-year-old, to like be more of an even-keeled entrepreneur.
So what changed in life and business when you got that diagnosis? I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm clear. I'm an 8-year survivor now. And, I learned that you can do all of it. You just have to prioritize things that are the most important. If my business closed, I still have my family, right? So I had to put my family first. And I think, I'm embarrassed to say this, but when I started opening the stores, I was all about the business. And my family kind of came second. And the thing that I learned the most from my cancer was family comes first, then the business. And I didn't unprioritize business. I just made it below family. And I realized how much my son and my husband had sacrificed for my dreams and goals. And it made me appreciate them more. So there was a lot of life lessons in there that, I could spend hours talking about the things that I learned about myself. And then it's okay to make mistakes, because, I hate to just be so blunt, but if you're dead, you can't fix things. If you're dead, you don't get to experience things. And I realized I need to really enjoy the moment. I need to really take this in.
How did you handle that bad news? Like, someone listening is like, maybe they got bad news or family or health or business. And, when you got the diagnosis, how did you handle it and handle that journey?
Well, so I have a really unique situation. My mother was a 2-time breast cancer survivor. Her mother was a 3-time. And they both had been very sick. So I grew up taking care of my mom and my grandmother. Now, I don't want to make it sound like they weren't able to take care of themselves. My mom was a dean at a college, and she was a total badass, and so was my grandmother, and they lived through that. They never once complained, and they were amazing. But I grew up around people who had challenges but still worked in corporate America and were like breaking glass ceilings as females. And so I was in a very beautiful situation. Now looking back on it, they both have passed away, and I'm like, oh my God, the life lessons that were instilled in me without saying a word were just mind-boggling, because I've never thought I couldn't do something. I never thought I couldn't do a man's role. I've never questioned that. And so, there's just so many life lessons of learning from having those journeys. But when I heard the news, I'm not going to lie, I probably said every cuss word you could think of, and I cried a lot. And my husband was like, oh my God, he comes from a superhuman gene pool. No one ever gets sick in his family. And so I say that. Now my father-in-law just beat bladder cancer, and my sister-in-law is going through breast cancer, but she'll be fine. Thank God. But, up until then, no one in his family had been sick. So I was the first exposure to him and his family of somebody having cancer. And they were very supportive, but I was having to educate them on top of me trying to navigate this journey that was like walking through mud with like galoshes on. It was like every step was really hard and sticky, but I just dealt with it, and I prioritized it. It's silly. I joke around that I'm going to write a book called Shower Epiphanies. I actually bought the domain name thinking one day I would write the book. And what I did is every morning, I'm a super positive person, even on like a really dark day. And one of my things is the reason I want to call it Shower Epiphanies is because every morning I would get in the shower, and it was very I don't know what the right word is, but it was very cathartic for me. Every morning in the shower, I would allow myself to cry and be really angry about my diagnosis and having to do chemo and losing my hair and gaining all this weight from steroids and feeling like I just wanted to go lay in bed all day, but I had meetings to get to. And I would cry while I was in the shower, because I'm a firm believer in you need to get out the bad with the good. And so I would cry while I was in the shower, and the minute I turned the shower off, I was like, no more cheers for the rest of the day. Get your head right, get to work, smile on your face, do good, do it again. So I knew that every morning when I got in the shower, I'd have this much time to cry and let out all the shit. And then, but I also felt better because I'd gotten it all out and like purged it. And it was very like, I don't know, it was just a vision of like, it's just washing off the sad and washing off all of the negative. And then when I would step out of that shower, it was like, put your game face on, you can do this. And it worked for me. And I've told many survivors about it and they liked that idea too, but it really helped me get through that and like trying to run businesses and being a mom and, you know, and it's important for people to see you have the sad side too, because if you're always just Pollyanna, that's not realistic, right? No one wants to see your whole highlight reel. They want to see real life reels. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Last question, Lisa, is, you know, it's amazing what you've done and what you've been through and what you've overcome, you know, from all that together. I want to hear a proud moment, you know, now that you've got through and these obstacles right now. What's been a proud moment with you in the business?
For sure, celebrating 10 years last month. You know, that was hard fought. You know, we survived a economic downturn. We survived COVID. We pivoted during COVID and launched an on-demand tutorial, take-at-home kits to save the businesses, and they took off. And now we're open and people are coming back. But I just learned a lot of lessons of like how not to run your business. I've had a lot of failures, but we didn't ever lose the business. I feel like in my mind, like I did some failures, but I just am so proud of where we have come in these 10 years. The idea of the team, the people who carry my vision forward of what we should be doing. And so I think that's my proudest moment is us hitting 10 years and having kick-ass employees and employing people who are extremely talented, but they don't fit in a real normal business world of sitting in an office, but they have these amazing skills and talents that share with the world. And you can see people come into the stores and paint. They come in, they're like, I don't want to be here. You can tell they're there with their girlfriends or their coworkers, and they have a bad attitude. And by the time they leave, they're high-fiving each other. They're laughing. They're hugging their coworkers they didn't get along with. They're hugging my team. Like, I feel like we sell happy. And that to me is like such a rare thing in this world right now. And I think those are my proudest things.
So I forgot to ask you, there's a woman who came in one time.
So one of the coolest things and one of the most heartfelt things that ever happened is I opened PinotsPalette because I wanted to just do something fun, have something to do besides going to the movies, going to the bar or dance club for people who are like me in my 40s, and I'm kind of over that scene. And don't get me wrong, I like to dance, but we had this lady come in one day and she said, during the day when we weren't having classes and my manager and I were there, and she said, you know, this is my favorite place. It means a lot to me. And we were like, okay, can you tell us why? And she said, yeah. So when my daughter turned 18, we stopped talking. I haven't talked to my daughter. She's 21. I haven't spoken to her. She won't take my calls. She's never talked to me. We had a falling out about some people that she was around and just got in with the wrong crowd, kind of got mixed up and stuff. And she said, I stuck out an olive branch to her. I could find her on Facebook and see that she was still alive because I literally hadn't heard from her, and this lady's just bawling. And she said, I emailed the last email address that I knew I had of my daughter's. And I said, I made reservations at PinotsPalette on Cherry Street. I've got you a seat, and I've got me a seat. All I ask is that you show up and you just sit next to me so I can see you. I'm going to cry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Anyways, so she said, I just want you to show up. I'm a mom. So, anyways, the day came for her class, and her daughter showed up. She sat down next to her, and she just said, I don't care if you speak to me or not. I just want to know that you're sitting here. So she was like, I got to lay eyes on my kid. She said within 30 minutes of the class, we broke through, we talked, we communicated. We apologized for everything that we had ever done. And she said, we've spoke every day since then, and it's been a year. And she was like, this place changed my life.
I feel like I don't know what your tagline is, but we bring families together is a good tagline for this.
Well, it's actually paint, drink, and have fun is our tagline, and I'm so sorry I cried. But
well, you have a secondary tagline.
Yeah, exactly, right? Building the bridges of something. So, yeah. I wasn't supposed to cry. This was not good.
This is perfect, you know.
the authenticity and the real challenges and the real life is what we want to hear. And where can people check out what you're doing online? And can people still get on-demand stuff?
So they would just go to PinotsPalette.com and PinotsPalette.com. And just like Pinot, like the wine, palette, like a painter's palette. And you go on there. We have almost 90 locations in the U.S. and Canada. And so you can go to your local chapter or local business and find your area in your state and just buy from their microsite. Yeah.
Thanks. Live from GLC.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.